Well, good morning and a very warm welcome from what has been a very frosty start to the day here in Lancaster. I hope you've all had a good week so far, and thank you very much for taking the time to come and spend a little bit of time with me this morning. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Stephen King. I'm the commercial manager here at Reed NCFE. For those of you who don't know who Reed NCFE are or haven't come across us before, we are a joint venture company. So 50% owned by Reed Recruitment and 50% owned by the awarding organisation NCFE. Now, as you'd expect, coming from the Reed stable, we've got a lot of expertise in employability skills, and that is the sole focus and focus of everything that we do here at Reed NCFE. So employability skills and work preparation really is our sort of bread and butter. So what are we going to do on this webinar? What will we have a look at today? Well, first off, we will have a look at some employability skills, stats and trends on a national scale. We have, as you may know, we've recently launched a test on assessment called BESTest. That's a baseline employability skills test. And we've had a good uptake so far. So we launched it at the beginning of this academic year. And now, obviously, if we're looking at national trends and statistics, we need to have a reasonable or decent number of learners that have gone through the test. There'll be a little value really doing it if we'd only had a couple of thousand go through. So luckily, we've had a lot of good uptake so far. So at a point in the year where we can have a look at what's happened so far and start to see some trends and themes emerging. So I'll have a look at those first, then we will have a look at BESTest itself. We'll have a look at the results, some of the reports, have a brief look at the system. I'll describe the system to you, and we'll have a look through the questions, a couple of the questions that feature, so you get a feel for the type of questions that your learners will be asked. If you have any questions yourself during the course of the webinar, on the screen on your right hand side there should be a small a toolbar. Within that, there's a questions tab, so please feel free to send any questions as you get them. We've got quite a few people on the line today, so if I don't get a chance to answer all of the questions, I will follow up afterwards with an email. Hopefully I'll get a chance at the end to kind of revisit some of those questions and get a response to you straight away. Then finally, what we'll do is we will have a look at the next steps. So future developments, and if it's something you want to take up, how you could access the test for your learners. Okay, let's crack on. So the themes and trends so far. Now these are the main four that I will have a look at. We'll spend more time on some than others. The first being gender. Now, there is a statistically significant difference between male and females in terms of their employability skills. Now, for those of you, I'm sure this is information you already know, but statistically significant difference means that the results are unlikely to be down to chance. So there's no, the results that we're seeing are because there is a difference, they're not just down to chance. So the difference between male and females is actually females so far and to date have been displaying a statistically significantly better employability skills or workplace behaviours than males. So that's an interesting thing to start with. Interesting enough, when we've looked at age, we actually haven't come across any statistical difference when you look at different ages across the sort of the span that we've had. So this means essentially that a 16-year-old who has taken the assessment is scoring similar or the same or even greater than a 24-year-old who's taken the assessment. Now, when I first considered these various metrics that we would be looking at, I assumed, wrongly as it turns out, that as a participant or as a learner got older, they would display better employability skills. That hasn't been the case, and I guess if we look at it in a little bit more detail and think through the type of learners that have taken the assessment so far, what we're not doing is we're not comparing a 16-year-old who is, for example, in an FE college with a 24-year-old who has been in employment for 6 years since the age of 18. That's not the sort of the comparison that we're making here. The comparison is between a 16-year-old who is in an FE college in full-time education and a 24-year-old who is in a similar situation. So even though their ages are different, their circumstances are the same. So that's where maybe why we're not seeing that difference that you may expect to see in terms of age. Now, in terms of the course, it's something in curriculum area. We'll have a look at that in a little bit more detail later on. I've got a few stats and graphs to share with you. And finally, on this slide, level. I guess, as you'd expect, really, we've seen a statistical difference between the levels. So as you go up through the levels, the employability skills that the learners are displaying is increasing accordingly. So as you go from level 1 to level 2, there's a significant difference. And as you go from level 2 to level 3, there's a significant difference. So I think that's probably what you'd expect to see, really. Okay, so I also mentioned that the results of this are from BESTest, so our baseline employability skills test. So that test assesses a learner's overall employability skills, and it also assesses 10 metrics that we've defined as being the sort of key metrics that make up a learner's work readiness. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got what we've defined as hard skills, so there's CV, job search, interview techniques, and workplace behaviours. And then on the right hand side in the blue box, what we've defined as the soft skills, so motivation, professionalism, sociability, initiative, resilience and organisation. And it's these soft skills, these are skills that all employers say that they want from their potential employees. So they're really key to how ready for the workplace your learners are. Now, what I'd like you to do very quickly, if you could, is jot down the order in which you think your learners would display these skills. So start with number 1, what do you think would be their main strength, and down to number 10, their main weakness. So if you could take 30 seconds to quickly do that, that'd be superb. Thank you. Okay, so the results that we have so far, so here they are. These are the scores that we have aggregated across the country to date. So as you can see, the two that are scoring highest are professionalism and sociability. So if we consider the time in the year that we've taken this assessment, so these scores are all from the formative assessment, so the first assessment that the learners are taking. So these scores are all from that point. So I think for me, if I was putting or about to put a learner into a work experience placement, clearly that's something that's coming over the next, if it hasn't already happened, I would be quite confident in sending them in if they're displaying good good professionalism skills and are being very sociable in a workplace scenario. I would be quite confident in sending them out on a work experience placement, really. In terms of the lowest, clearly we can see CV is the lowest and by some margin, closely followed by initiative. What I would quickly like to point out in terms of CV, it isn't the physical hard copy of a CV that we are assessing. It is their understanding of what CV is, their understanding of how to use a CV and how a CV should be used as a tool, really, to help get them in front of an employer. Clearly the scores are linked, so there's a strong link between the soft skills and the hard skills. Clearly the soft skills, as you could probably see, they are what we would describe as attributes or mindsets or personalities types, and they clearly, those attributes drive the behaviours, which are the hard skills. So for example, if we take a look at the two in conjunction, you have high scores in professionalism and sociability. That will clearly drive a higher score in interview skills and workplace behaviours. If you can present yourself in a professional manner and you display good sociability skills in a workplace setting. This isn't assessing their sociability in, say, with their friends, it is in a workplace scenario. Clearly, those two factors would mean that you, as a candidate, would display better interview skills, or you in the workplace would display better workplace behaviours. Equally, if we look at the bottom of the scale, displaying low levels of initiative may indicate that you wouldn't necessarily use your CV in an effective way to get yourself in front of an employer. You wouldn't necessarily look at alternative ways of attracting an employer to invite you in to interview. And then clearly within the middle of the scores, we've got the organisation and motivation. They're two factors that would really influence a learner's job search skills. If you're motivated in your search for a job and you're highly organised and you keep a record, for example, of your job search activities, you're clearly going to display have better job search skills. And as we can see right at the bottom, the overall employability skills to date is at 58.5%. Now again, just to reiterate that this is the formative assessment. This is not, we don't yet have a measure of distance travel, so this is the start point. So this is where learners are starting from in the time at the provider that they're working with. Okay, so next, if we have a quick look at that information in graphical format, clearly see you've got a group at the top. The top 8 aren't too dissimilar in level, in score, and the 2 at the bottom really are way out in bottom, especially CV. It's quite surprising how far below the other scores that is. Now, in terms of curriculum areas and courses, I said we'd spend a little bit more time on this. So this is an aggregated score for each of the, or selection of the curriculum areas that learners have taken the assessment from so far. This slide is all of those which are above that average, so above that 58.5% national average. The next slide is those that are below. So I'd just quickly like to point out a couple that I think are particularly interesting. So as you can see, professional studies way out in front at the moment. In second, ESOL, that was a slight surprise to myself. I didn't know where that would come really. If you'd asked me beforehand where I thought that would come, but I probably wouldn't have said second. What I would probably say at this point is that is one of the smaller cohorts of learners that we've had. So whether that will change in time, it would be interesting to see, but currently doing well in second place. 2 others that I think I was rightly or wrongly slightly surprised to see above average are sports studies and media, and in particular the third one, A-levels. Now, whether the argument is that a learner studying an A-level is further from the jobs market than a learner studying, say, hair and beauty, because they're going to university, and then therefore you would expect them not to display quite the same level of employability skills. That's something that I thought was worth noting, that it was scoring pretty well. In terms of those that score lower than the average, so again, a small selection of the curriculum areas and the courses. As you can see, foundation learning is the lowest at the moment, and a couple that I expected to see much higher than they are. In particular, so there's early years and health and social care. Now, I fully expected them, given their long-standing history, I guess, of work experience within the curriculum, and or traditionally their strong links to industry. To be honest, I fully expected them to be a lot higher in the rankings than they are. Whether we'll see, again, just reaffirming that point, that this is the formative assessment, so whether we'll see when the summative assessment comes through, that because these curriculum areas have those really strong links, we see that health and social care in early years, actually when we come to consider distance travelled, they have the greatest percentage of distance travelled, and then at the end of the course are higher up the scale in terms of their work readiness. So I think that's something I'll certainly be keeping my eye on as the year unfolds. Lastly, on this, just a very quick look at a comparison between the highest and the lowest. What we can see quite clearly is there are similar trends, so that where the strengths and weaknesses lie mirror almost exactly across both cohorts of learners. Maybe if we look at, say, job search and organisation, as I mentioned before, those are two that are probably quite closely linked in their scoring metrics. We can see that they're slightly closer than the average distance between the two, and workplace behaviours are certainly further apart, and that's, as you can see, probably strongly driven by the fact that sociability in particular is significantly different when compared to the other groupings and the other scores. So that's hopefully a quick insight and overview of what the trends are that are emerging. As I said, I think that they'll be very, very interesting when we start seeing the summative assessments coming through and we start getting an idea of which areas are really improving the learners' employability skills as they go through their time on the course. So that'll be more another webinar, I'm sure, following up towards the end of the academic year. I've noticed there are a few questions coming in as we're going through, so I think what I'll probably do is just keep going for the time being, and then try and catch up with those questions at the end if we have a couple of minutes. Okay. So how have we got these scores so far? So as I mentioned before, these results and these data so far has come from a tool called BESTest, and that tool, BESTest, the acronym stands for Baseline Employability Skills Test. So it's as you probably guessed, it's an employability skills diagnostic tool, which has initially it has two primary functions. So it's the first being to, through this the formative assessment, the results of which we've just looked at, to identify a learner's strengths and probably more importantly their weaknesses, so where the greatest interventions needed. And then at the end of the course, to accurately measure distance travelled and evidence impact of learning. We developed this test with the University of Leeds. Now, the University of Leeds have a very well-regarded occupational psychology team, and so they have a lot of experience in developing psychometric tests, and that they have been able to give us the assurance that this test that they've developed is psychometrically valid and it is psychometrically reliable, which is really, for me, is really important. For those of you who are not familiar with psychometric testing, validity refers to the fact that it measures what it says it measures. And at this point, it was probably worthwhile saying that it doesn't measure, and neither does it try to measure the learner's personality profile. So it won't say, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And neither does it try to be or want to be a career suitability test. So it won't come out and say, off the back of this assessment, you should be a policeman or you should be a nurse. It is very much a narrow focus, solely looking at the learners' employability skills and their work readiness. In terms of reliability, reliability refers to the fact that if you took the assessment twice, say you took the assessment on a Monday morning and then on a Friday afternoon, when your outlook on life may be a little bit different, you are not going to get a wildly different score. It's going to be pretty much the same regardless of when you take the assessment or how you feel when you're actually taking that assessment. So that when you come to consider that we're using this tool, or you could, providers are using this tool to measure distance travelled, that's really important, because if there's other factors that could influence that score, how do you accurately say this, or confidently say that all of the improvements and all the increases in the score are down to the work that you've done? So that reliability really is key to the success of the tool, really. And as I said, the University of Leeds have given us the assurance that this is a fully valid and reliable psychometric test. So the test itself, there are 30 employability skills questions that may comprise the test. On average, to date, it's taken about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and it takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and that's completed online as well, so it can be accessed anywhere the learner can access the internet. All of the questions are situational workplace scenarios. Now the questions, we'll have a look at a couple, and I'm happy to share more questions with you if you like. Let me know if you would like to see some more of the questions, and I can happily send some more through to you. But for the sake of getting through all of the information in half an hour, we'll just have a look at a couple. But you'll see from the couple we look at, they are not quite so obvious as should you train us to an interview. They're more nuanced than that and not quite so obvious in terms of their right and wrong answer. It measures the 4 hard skills that we looked at before, and it also measures the 6 soft skills that we looked at before. Now, in terms of suitability, we've firmly pitched the language of the test at levels 1 to levels 3, so sort of firmly in that study programme cohort grouping. We have had learners go through it successfully, or from entry level 3. What I wouldn't say is we haven't had anybody from an entry 1 or entry 2 level take the test yet, but I see with help and assistance, I'm sure they could manage it. But as I said, so far to date, it's been used with entry 3 learners upwards. So what do you get as a learner? What score do you receive? So this is a scorecard that an individual learner would receive. So as you can see on the right hand side there, they get an overall employability score of, in this case it has John Smith has a score of 54%. Now clearly this slide you can see we've split the report. On a report that you would receive, it would be one continuous piece of paper. And you can see they get to steal an English functional skills phrase, a spiky profile of their score. So you can quickly and very easily identify what are this learner's strengths, and as I said before, more importantly, where are these learners' weaknesses? Where do we need to focus our interventions in the time that they're with us? So, as I said, the learner takes the assessment twice. So the learner would get this scorecard at the start of the academic year, or at the start of their course, or potentially before work experience placement, and then take the assessment again and get the exact same format of scorecard at the end of the course, work experience placement or academic year. So you can very easily see on an individual learner basis where that learner has improved and the impact that you've had. Hopefully they will all be significantly further to the right than when they first started. Now, as well as learner by learner results, so the learner gets that, the tutor gets this, and the senior management team can get access to these reports. You also get scores by course, so you can group your learners. In this instance, it's an engineering level 2 course. So as a cohort, you can start getting a feel for where the learner's strengths and weaknesses are. And again, if we consider the time of year that this potentially has been taken, we'll be relatively confident sending these learners out into the workplace for a work experience placement. Consider that if this score was at the end of the year, I would be a little bit concerned that they would never get the opportunity to display that they have good workplace behaviours, because their interview skills are so poor that they wouldn't actually get into work. So again, that context is key as well. So you get the scores grouped at a course level. You can then group them at a curriculum level. So in this instance, health and social care. So you can then start comparing and contrasting different curriculum areas, different courses, start building up a picture of where your learners are as an overview, and where maybe employability skills provision is working and maybe where it isn't working quite so well. So you start getting a really good picture of what's going on within your organisation. You'll see in the top right hand corner of this test kind of almost a crescent moon shape on its side. This is where we can brand the results, so we can have your company logo, your organisation logo added to the scorecard. And then finally, overall provider score. Now, if I know we've got a few private training providers on the line. This is an example taken from college. So the language has obviously changed to reflect the type of provider that is using the tool. So as an overall college, or an overall provider, you get a very good feel for where your learners' strengths and weaknesses are. And then you can, as an overall provider, you can start measuring distance travelled and seeing the impact of learning. Okay, so a very quick look through some of the questions. Now, very obviously, you can identify which of the hard skills is being assessed. So if I look at this question, clearly we're looking at a learner's CV skills. 9 times out of 10, that score is, oh, 1 second, sorry about that. 9 times out of 10, that skill is identified within the question. Now, the soft skills are harder to unpick. I mean, if you really want to look through all of the questions, you could probably just about work out which of the soft skills is being assessed in which question. But again, it's not obvious, and it wouldn't be obvious to the learner which of that's is happening. So now if we look at the second question, so again, this is clearly measuring a learner's job search skills. Now you can see on this occasion where the learner has selected the score, it highlights it in blue. So quite a very simple and easy to use system, very visually clean and not too overly complicated. Now, as I said, this is just a very quick snapshot of what the questions look like. I'm more than happy to give send a few more questions out to you if you'd like. Just I'll give you my email at the end of this webinar so you can have a look and let me know if you'd like to see some more of the questions. So next steps. So this is a brand new product for 2016-2017 academic year. The cost is £2 per learner, and that's inclusive of that. For those £2 per learner, you get the 2 assessments that we looked at, so the formative and the summative assessment. You also get all of those reports that we looked at as well, so the course, curriculum, whole provider reports as well. So in terms of how it's accessed, you can access it through your own portal. So if you have a VLE or Moodle, we provide you with a web link which you can put onto that portal, and your learners can access it wherever they can access that portal. Now there's no login information, so they don't need to remember another username and password. They can log straight onto the course and get started without having to log in or do anything like that. Because it is web-based, it really is very, very easy to set up. It is literally a case of sending you a URL, and you can do with it what you choose. If you don't have a VLE or Moodle, I know some of providers don't, you can email that link out. You can get tutors to pass that link out however you wish. Now, in terms of future developments, what we are developing currently is a set of resources to directly answer or directly mapped to the BESTest results. So you will then be able to purchase a package whereby you get your scorecard. You can then access resources that are specifically linked to each of those 10 metrics and scores that we saw, and then have a real impact on their learning, really focused on those particular scores in the context, particular areas in the context of BESTest. Then you get to take the learner to take the test again, and hey presto, distance travelled is very, very good. We do have already developed a number of resources that focus on the 4 hard skills. So they focus on the 4 hard skills, but in the context of say work experience, so a progression to work experience blended learning program, and a progression to apprenticeships blended learning program. So it's the focus on the hard skills, but definitely and primarily and intentionally focused on those 2 key areas. And again, I'm more than happy to send out some information on those programs if you would like to see them. Please just let me know with the using the email address or phone number that is on your screen right now. Now, I said I'll try and answer a couple of questions. I have a minute left before the end of the allotted half an hour, so I'll try and rattle through a couple of the questions that have come in. So the first one came in early, so it's how is it accessed? As I said before, accessed through a URL link. And another question quickly to answer, sorry I should have answered this earlier, is how do the learners and how do you receive the results? Well, the learners get an immediate score at the end. As soon as they've taken the assessment, they're greeted with a screen which gives them their immediate score. That comes with a PDF attachment that they can download, so that can be printed or saved to their ILR and kept on file. The learner is also emailed a copy of that scorecard, and so are you. So we email a named account within your company. What most providers are doing is setting up a BESTest at email account. Now that's more of a kind of a safety net, really. If by any chance one of your learners doesn't happen to save or print off the PDF, or somehow manages to lose that, you've got the backup of that being emailed to a designated email account, so you can go and access that whenever you need to get that result. And then in terms of the aggregated results, we send you another URL where you can access those links and search and filter against the specific courses that you want to find. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this webinar. I hope it's been useful. I will send out an email this afternoon with responses to some of the other questions that have come in that I haven't quite got time to get through this morning. And also, as and when it's ready, I'll send through a recording of this webinar so that you can share with colleagues. If you would like any more information, or if you'd like me to demo the tool in a bit more detail to you and colleagues, please do feel free to give me a call or give me an email, and I look forward to speaking to you in the very near future. Thank you very much. Take care. Speak to you soon.